Hey, welcome in. Come on in, grab a seat. This is going to be a great conversation. I'm excited to discuss some of these projections with you guys and really start to think about this more on a strategic playing field. Okay, so before I get into the whole topic and everything, and what we're going to talk about in this conversation, I know a lot of new people are always joining. And so I want to take some time to introduce myself before we begin talking about the topic. So, my name is Kirsten Allen. I work with entrepreneurs and experts to help them get more corporate contracts in their business, utilizing a simplified system that is relationship based and allows you to tap into those awesome and huge contracts that can move rocks and boulders in your business for the future. So, hopefully you can hear and see me. It's saying connection is unstable. Not sure why it would be because I'm in the same place. Let me just check something real quick to make sure that you guys are able to see and hear me. Um, hold on. All right, saying I'm live. Okay. All right, so I'm looking good over here. Hopefully you guys can see me well. All right, so the connection is improving. Yes, so that's essentially what I do on that side. And then I also work with corporate organizations in the realm of leadership and development. So I share that with you so that you know I practice what I teach and preach and utilize these same strategies to grow my business as well as I'm supporting other entrepreneurs. So with that being said, just to give you a little bit of my background and experience so that you know you're talking to the right person and the things that I'm saying are not just from ideas or things that I necessarily picked up from online. These are my hard-earned skills that I literally put my blood, sweat, and tears into over the years of growing my career from starting off in an entry-level position to working my way up to account executive, closing over $16 million of business in the 4 years that I worked for an organization, and that was doing business B2B. And I have to say that loud because, again, I did not think that I would ever be doing this or sharing this type of work with you all, but I was responsible for creating $60 million for corporation. So I can definitely help you know a thing or two about how to get contracts in your own business. And so that is what we're going to be talking about here today. All right. That being said, this topic. So I wanted to talk about 2025. And before I even get into this, remember we're still in 2024. We still have what, 40 probably something days left in the year to still get some last minute opportunities. Now, of course, holidays get a little choppy, but there is still plenty of time in December and maybe some time even before this month wraps out, before we get into holiday season with Thanksgiving, to start making contacts. And if anything, building relationships, but also possibility is to get some last minute funds that these organizations have left over for the year. And so when I'm talking about 2025, I don't want us just thinking that that is our only focus. Just for this particular topic today, I want to talk about what you can start to think through. So in my program, I guided my clients through yesterday on what things to start thinking about and putting in place. And I wanted to bring some of that conversation to you all today so that you can begin to prepare and think about how you set yourself up for success in 2025. So one of the major things with the economic state of the world that affects us is that as our economy starts to shift, of course, we weren't in recession or anything like that, but of course, we had some economic changes happen. As we look forward to that improvement, which, we'll see based upon what things happen as we move into January, into the next year's changes of power and all of that always has some types of effects. But as our economy, which it moves in cycles up and down anyway, as we start to trickle up, one thing that we can expect to see, and I've seen this inside of organizations for myself, is that when consumers start spending more, company budgets start to expand. So the only time you hear of cutbacks and all of that stuff is when the sales aren't looking good. But when numbers look good, all of a sudden there's money to spend everywhere. So if you've ever worked inside of a corporation, you may have experienced it and may not have noticed like how subtle things start to shift. Like all of a sudden we're having team dinners and we're doing this and people are back to traveling and all the things when the earnings call, which is basically what companies use to share out like their reporting numbers and all of those things. And if you have companies that you're interested in working with, I would suggest looking at things like annual reports or earning calls so that you can kind of see what's the status of that organization and see if it's healthy enough for you to want to consider doing some work with. Anyway, that just came to mind as a strategy or thing to tap into, which happens to me often. Let me stay on the topic. Anyway, as consumers spend, company budgets increase. And that's important for you to know because in those organizations or industries that are booming, they have budgets to spend all across the board. So yes, they're making investments. They may be doing things like raising salaries for their teams and all of that sort of stuff. But they're also raising budgets for the different pieces of support they need in order to help execute or facilitate some of those investments that they're making in the company. So here's an example. Maybe they are bringing on, a bunch of new folks as a part of a new team that they're developing out. So I've worked in companies where, unfortunately, whole teams have been slashed and where teams have been brought on. And so when you think about seeing that type of expansion in companies, what does that mean for you as a provider? Especially, y'all know I always speak to the professional development side because many of you are in that space and it's so lucrative in terms of opportunities and ways to connect. And so I like to make sure to give those examples. But as they're bringing in new people and teams, they need better leaders. They need better communication. They need people to actually work well together. So in many retrospects of you all that I speak with, things like emotional intelligence, collaboration, reducing stress and burnout, like y'all do some amazing things that can all contribute to companies that are experiencing a lot of growth, a lot of change, a lot of different shifts in the ways people work. Restructuring is what they would call it. And so those are great opportunities where you can tap in and say, well, how does what I do align with a company that is potentially restructuring? How can I help a company be able to create ease around bringing on a bunch of new team members to start a new department or a new initiative or program that they're running to make sure that that's a success? If you're in more of a service-based type of thing, I think other people that are connected to me are typically in like marketing or do some type of service-based things. Think about that as well. What ways do these companies need support to understand how to use things like Threads, for example? I've seen a couple of organizations over there kind of tapping into that, but pay attention to like what's going on around us because companies are going by consumer behavior as well. And so if you're a social media or digital manager, think about how, just with that simple example of Threads, how can companies use Threads to better connect with their customers? Can that be an edge or something that you can bring to the table as a differentiator of something they may not even be thinking about? So that's just an example, but the overall takeaway point is that with growth comes opportunities to continue to serve. With that being said, I want to make sure that you understand, while opportunities are plentiful and around everywhere in many of the different segments that I shared with you. So for anyone new, when I say corporate contract, I don't just mean the organizations that we know and love and that we constantly patronize. I'm talking about also organizations that you probably never even heard of, that you didn't know had budgets that could pay you, six-figure contracts or whatever it looks like for you with no problem. I know people who work with quote unquote small businesses, and you may want to look up the definition of what a small business is because it's totally different from what the internet is saying. But those small businesses classified by the SBA, they have money to be able to hire you on a contract basis and pay you well for the services that you're looking to do. So don't get so caught up in the names. Think about who are the organizations that actually have a need. Start building relationships and having conversations to see what the needs are. And that will determine what you package and put in front of these organizations. And I'd be willing to bet that you will find some that may not necessarily be household names, but that are also like, yeah, we'll pay you 10,000, 25,000, whatever it is to do the work that you do with no problem. In addition to that, other opportunities or ways to get contracts also lie in universities. I want you guys to give a shout out in the chat to my client Arva, because she is probably either wrapping up or getting close to doing her contract at a university today. She flew out today and I'm super excited for her. And so universities have money, like they have programs, they have needs for their students and their faculty that you can tap into. And Arva is a testament to that. So celebrate her in the chat so she can come back and see it as she's going down there to kill it at a university. And in addition to that, K-12 school systems, nonprofit, government entities, there are so many places where you could be landing contracts right now, but you have to be willing to think outside of the box in which your expertise can be a benefit. Same way we just talked about leadership and development. Everybody needs that. Everybody needs the tools in order to do their job more efficiently and and be more productive. What is your system? What is your thing? What is your unique edge to how you can help people be able to achieve that, whether they're in a corporation or they're in a school? I'll give you another example from our conversation last night, a light bulb that we had during our Q&A call. We were talking with one of my other clients, Lauren, which I've shared her story here. And for the most part, we were working on corporations and getting her into nonprofit organizations. And then last night, we were talking about students and the same skill sets that she teaches to executives or corporate leaders on how to do mindfulness. She has breath work exercises, all these different things that she does. And she was like, I could see this for students that are preparing for a test, like their SATs, like stressful moments where they have to perform, for their grades or, whatever type of things, get into college, all the things. I could see me coming in and teaching them these tactics. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would be so good. And so it's all about the expertise that you have. It's not about what type of box that you can put it in. So when we're going into 2025, we're thinking outside of the box. We're tapping into opportunities where it's our low-hanging fruit, but it's also places where most people aren't thinking. Most people are just thinking it's got to be an Apple, Google, or Amazon, or whoever. And what you don't know about some of those opportunities is they may not be paying as handsomely as you think they are. The bank down the street might be paying a lot more than some of these departments in these larger companies. And the amount of red tape that you would have to go through could be a lot less going with companies in certain areas, or even shifting out into some of those spaces like universities, like K-12 institutions and all of those. So keep your mind open and be willing to build relationships where your problem can be solved. Okay. So that being said, what you want to make sure that you have in place is get really clear on that first piece. Your expertise. Who is it of value? Who stands to gain the most? Who are the breadth of people that you could be working with? I know a lot of times, especially in the entrepreneurship space, it's like very common to niche, and to have this specific niche and to just be the person of this. That is great. However, we flip that on its head when we come to organization, government contracts, corporate contracts, whatever it may look like for you. That's flipped on its head. Once you get in, they want to know all of what you can do, because it's relationship based. It's not about how do we put you in just this particular space. It's like, oh, you did really good with this. Well, do you do this? Like, do you know someone that you can bring in to help us with this? Like, here are the other things that we have going on that we also need assistance with. And because we already have a relationship with you, like, how else can we continue to partner? That's the posture of organizations when you're working with them, versus trying to put one hat on and say, you're just in this box. So with that being said, think about what are some of those key areas that you can tap into, and how can you make a niche around your expertise in a broader scope versus just saying, well, I only work with organizations, or my expertise is only with school systems, it's only with this, it's only with that. You probably have other areas. So get very clear on that and what type of pinpoints or segments you want to start tapping into as you go into that. Second thing is get set up. Now, here's the thing. Y'all come in close because I'm going to give you a little bit of tea on what these folks are saying in the back rooms. So when I have conversations or I'm sitting in, a part of the work that I do, of course, is teaching. But again, because I do the things that I teach, I'm in the rooms with these decision makers and I'm listening to hear like what their responses are to certain things so that I can have more of a well-rounded experience, because I've been a decision maker before, so I know my experience then, but I like to make sure I stay current with what's happening and what type of conversations are going on. And so very recently, more than one time, I've heard that these decision makers they have opportunities, they have funds set aside for certain folks, whether it's diverse groups, women owned, like they have money that's set aside for opportunities, even small businesses. The gap is that when most vendors come to, opportunities, whether that's in person to meet them or whatever, sending an email, whatever it looks like, they're unprepared. They're treating an opportunity to meet vendors for corporate contracts like a job fair. Hey, here's what I do. What do you have for me? That is one of the things across the board that I'm hearing so much that I'm like, we have to bring this beyond just my clients, but in my community, that we are prepared when we go after these opportunities, that you have things like your capability statement together. I don't have time to get all into that. You can Google it, check it out, work with me, get it done, whatever you need to do. Capability statement together. You need to understand how what you do can be a benefit for organizations. If you leave them to figure it out, they're not going to figure it out. They're just going to be like, oh, okay, I don't know. So, on to the next person that's prepared, that knows what they have to offer and that's ready to go. So it's not enough to just know about the opportunities. You have to be prepared for the opportunities. You have to make sure you have certain things in place. Your business has to be set up in a certain way to even receive an opportunity to do business with an organization. You have to be in the right spaces. Most people are looking for who they can reach out to and don't understand that if you had things set up, if you had certain pieces in place, you wouldn't be wondering who to reach out to because you'd have opportunities coming your way. What if that could be the possibility? So get set up. I don't want to hear any of these people saying that small business owners don't come correct when they have opportunities on the table. Be prepared. Have some ideas, do some research, look at things, like I said, earnings, annual reports, look at their pages on LinkedIn, see what the priorities are and how what you do and the work that you do in the world can combine with that. And always tie it to the thing that I tell everyone: how can you help them be more efficient, make more money, save more money? If it's a different type of organization, like a school, for example, it's not necessarily money. However, it is, because things like retaining their staff, making sure their students are producing at a certain level, all those things tie into funding for the school. So every type of person that they bring in for contracts or any type of work, it has to have some tie to the bottom line. You just need to know what that looks like. And the second piece of being prepared, know how to guide people through a conversation to extract what exactly they need and what their priorities are and how it could potentially be a match. That's another thing that kind of puts a lot of people, gives them a little bit of angst and is a missed opportunity. Your goal, and one of my strong suits as a salesperson, I just leaned into it because I'm like, I'm not the person that's going to talk. My strong suit was always listening. And that's how I was successful. And so when I talk to people and I'm training them on how to do this, I'm like, you just want to ask the right questions. You're an investigator. You're not there to do a pitch. You are not a salesperson in that moment. You are a thought partner and a consultative partner. So your goal is to ask the right questions, get the information that you need so that you can move them forward if it makes sense. So you need to know what questions to ask them. You need to know how to determine, is this actually a true need? Is this a timeline in which I could potentially deliver this or want to even go down this route with them? Like if they're talking about something, 2 years from now, okay, we'll circle back because right now it doesn't make sense for us to kind of go further in this conversation. And then getting very clear on the financial piece. So you don't want to just go in and be like, well, how much money y'all got? I heard everybody saying y'all got multi-million dollars, y'all got this and that. So how much money do y'all have? That's not going to work. Assume that they have the budget. Like, that's not an issue. It's what do they allocate for the things in which you've presented to them, and what's the value that they feel is appropriate for that work. You need to know that for yourself. And you do that by doing things like market research to figure out what organizations are spending on similar services. You do that by getting in community and seeing what types of opportunities people are actually getting awarded and what's behind that. And you do that by having more of those discovery call conversations and putting yourself out there with the price point that you assign to your work. Once you get in a space where you're prepared and solid in what you can deliver, you have your back end set up, your business is prepared to do this, things like getting your insurance in place, your capability statements, your NACE code, like you have everything ready to go to be a viable vendor to these folks. Then you get a seat at the table to be able to say, like, hey, I'm here. This is what I do. Let's have a conversation about this and let's build a relationship. That is the key to tapping into these opportunities. It's not who can be the spammiest on LinkedIn, who can send the most emails, who can send the most pitches, which again, grinds my gears. You don't pitch anyone in your first email or contact with somebody. So subtle. And what I was just telling somebody a moment ago is that when people do those things, it's annoying, but it's a benefit to us, because when we actually come building a relationship and following the processes that I'm telling you guys today, you get emails back that's like, oh my gosh, I never respond to these emails, but something about what you said just resonated with me and I decided to respond to you. I hear it all the time. And I'm like, it's so interesting because you're not saying anything like super grandiose. You're just being a human and having a conversation. And in our digital world, so many people are robotic and not doing that. And so you stand out just by simply being yourself and being willing to have a collaborative conversation to figure out what that solution could look like. All right. So as we are kind of wrapping up, because I could go all day long on this, as we get into 2025, keep in mind, economic success means that budgets will increase for these organizations. And we want to make sure that we're prepared, because the flip side to that is, yes, budgets increase, but if the money isn't spent, if they're not finding the right people to do the work, then they will shift and move those funds to other areas, and opportunities will continue to shrink for us. We don't want that. So we want to be prepared, we want to be proactive, and we want to be building relationships in order to get into these opportunities. Do that in 2025 should be set up very well for you, especially if you have it as a part of your profit centers or streams that you want to start building into your company. This is some of the foundational key pieces that you want to have in place as you move forward into these opportunities. All right. So I want to hear your key takeaways. I saw a lot of y'all in here. I see all the likes and hearts and all of that. So I want to hear your key takeaways in the comments of what you got from this conversation, and not just your takeaways. What are your key actions? What are you going to do as a result of this conversation? What's one piece that you say, you know what? I'm going to get that capability statement together, or I'm going to go and figure out who's in my network that I can reach out to. I'm going to get myself certified so that I can lock into some of these set aside opportunities that I want to do with organizations and governments. What's the one thing that you're going to take away? Do that in the chat so that I can share in that with you and, celebrate you along the way. Awesome, Kathy. I see you in there. So share that. And then the final thing that I always want to do is, because I know that people are not just looking for information, but some are actually looking for support so that they can move forward. So I want to share with you what that looks like. And so essentially in the work that I do, it is helping people not only understand their placement, but also make sure they get set up for these opportunities so that they don't fall through the cracks, and guiding them through that process of having these conversations, knowing what to ask, knowing the nuances. Some people think that it's just as easy as, just slapping some things together and getting out there. But there's also some sides to this that you want to be aware of so that you don't put your company, your intellectual property, or anything that you've built at risk by going after these opportunities. The work that I do combined helps you be able to get through some of those pitfalls and make sure that you're set up for success, not only on paper, but having conversations with folks. And so, if you are interested in figuring out how we can work together to support you in having a seamless process to these opportunities, then what I want you to do is DM me the letters WWK, acronym for Work with Kirsten, WWK, and let's schedule some time before I leave on my birthday, because my birthday is next week, which is so crazy. Let's have a conversation and see how we can support you in getting set up, tapping into some of these opportunities right now that are still available, and then making sure 2025 is the year where corporate contracts is a solid profit center for your business, a repeatable profit center for your business that you can do like the back of your hand. You're already doing great work. You already have a level of expertise in in what you've done to get here. Now, how can you create more ease by saying, all right, I have a multi-year contract where I show up this many times a year or whatever it looks like, and that's just guaranteed money that I already have off the top. What would that do for your business? Like, let's get into the real about what that would really create for you if you had that already set up and in your mind and already on your books. Everything else is just like gravy, but you know that that's your foundation. Think about that. And if it is something that you would like support in, we would love to be able to chat with you more about what that would look like. Thank you, Kimberly. I'm excited. Y'all know Sagittarius, we don't play about our birthdays. Or I'll say November, December. Let's not get into the zodiacs. But anyway, staying to the point. Reach out, send me a DM. Let's book some time to have a conversation and see how we can support you in an end-to-end process of setting this up for your business and creating a foundation. All right. It's been fun with y'all. I love seeing your takeaways. I'll come back and circle with you and celebrate what you're looking to do. For those of you who decide to come in closer and have a conversation about how we can support, I'm looking forward to that. And then for those who are tuning in with us, we are here every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, on various topics just like this. So if you enjoyed this conversation, I look forward to seeing you next week for our next topic, and I will talk to you all soon. Have an amazing day.